brought to you by WikiVidi Documentaries. Raspberry Pi. The Raspberry Pi is a series of small single-board computers developed in the United Kingdom by the Raspberry Pi Foundation to promote the teaching of basic computer science in schools and in developing countries. The original model became far more popular than anticipated, selling outside of its target market for uses such as robotics. Peripherals are not included with the Raspberry Pi. Some accessories, however, have been included in several official and unofficial bundles. According to the Raspberry Pi Foundation, over 5 million Raspberry Pis have been sold before February 2015, making it the best-selling British computer. By November 2016 they had sold 11 million units. Overview. Several generations of Raspberry Pis have been released. The first generation was released in February 2012. It was followed by a simpler and inexpensive Model A in 2014. The Foundation released a board with an improved design in Raspberry Pi 1 Model B+. These boards are approximately credit card sized and represent the standard mainline form factor. Improved A+ and B+ models were released a year later. A compute module was released in April 2014 for embedded applications, and a Raspberry Pi Zero with smaller size and reduced input-output and general-purpose input-output capabilities was released in November 2015 for $5. The Raspberry Pi 2, which added more RAM, was released in February 2015. Raspberry Pi 3 Model B, released in February 2016, is bundled with onboard Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, and USB boot capabilities. As of January 2017, Raspberry Pi 3 Model B is the newest mainline Raspberry Pi. Raspberry Pi boards are priced between $5.35. As of the 28th of February 2017, the Raspberry Pi Zero W was launched, which is identical to the Raspberry Pi Zero, but has the Wi-Fi and Bluetooth functionality of the Raspberry Pi 3 for $10. All models feature a Broadcom system on a chip, which includes an ARM-compatible central processing unit and an on-chip graphics processing unit. CPU speed ranges from 700 MHz to 1.2 GHz. For the Pi 3, an onboard memory range from 256 MB to 1 GB RAM. Secure digital cards are used to store the operating system and program memory in either the SDHC or micro SDHC sizes. Most boards have between 1 and 4 USB slots, HDMI and composite video output, and a 3.5mm phono jack for audio. Lower-level output is provided by a number of GPIO pins which support common protocols like I2C. The B models have an 8P8C Ethernet port, and the Pi 3 and Pi Zero W have onboard Wi-Fi 802.11n and Bluetooth. The Foundation provides Raspbian, a Debian-based Linux distribution for download, as well as third-party Ubuntu, Windows 10 IoT Core, RISC-OS, and specialized media center distributions. It promotes Python and Scratch as the main programming language, with support for many other languages. The default firmware is closed source, while an unofficial open source is available. Hardware. The Raspberry Pi hardware has evolved through several versions that feature variations in memory capacity and peripheral device support. This block diagram depicts models A, B, A+, and B+. Model A, A+, and the Pi Zero lack the Ethernet and USB hub components. The Ethernet adapter is internally connected to an additional USB port. In Model A, A+, and the Pi 0, the USB port is connected directly to the system on a chip. On the Pi 1 Model B+, and later models, the USB Ethernet chip contains a 5-point USB hub, of which 4 ports are available, while the Pi 1 Model B only provides 2. On the Pi 0, the USB port is also connected directly to the SoC, but it uses a micro USB port. Processor. The Broadcom BCM2835 SoC used in the first-generation Raspberry Pi is somewhat equivalent to the chip used in first modern-generation smartphones, which includes a 700 MHz ARM1176J ZFS processor, video core IV graphics processing unit, and RAM. It has a Level 1 cache of 16 KB and a Level 2 cache of 128 KB. The Level 2 cache is used primarily by the GPU. The SoC is stacked underneath the RAM chip, so only its edge is visible. The Raspberry Pi 2 uses a Broadcom BCM2836 SoC with a 900 MHz 32-bit quad-core ARM Cortex-A7 processor, with 256 KB shared L2 cache. The Raspberry Pi 3 uses a Broadcom BCM2837 SoC with a 1.2 GHz 64-bit quad-core ARM Cortex-A53 processor, with 512 KB shared L2 cache. Performance. The Raspberry Pi 3, with a quad-core Cortex-A53 processor, is described as 10 times the performance of a Raspberry Pi 1. This was suggested to be highly dependent upon task threading and instruction set use. Benchmarks showed the Raspberry Pi 3 to be approximately 80% faster than the Raspberry Pi 2 in parallelized tasks. Raspberry Pi 2 includes a quad-core Cortex-A7 CPU running at 900 MHz and 1 GB RAM. It is described as 4-6 times more powerful than its predecessor. The GPU is identical to the original. In parallelized benchmarks, the Raspberry Pi 2 could be up to 14 times faster than a Raspberry Pi 1 Model B+, while operating at 700 MHz by default. The first-generation Raspberry Pi provided a real-world performance roughly equivalent to 0041G flops. On the CPU level, the performance is similar to a 300 MHz Pentium II of 1997-99. The GPU provides 1 G-pixel per second or 1.5 G-texel per second of graphics processing, or 24 GFLOPS of general-purpose computing performance. The graphical capabilities of the Raspberry Pi are roughly equivalent to the performance of the Xbox of 2001. The LINPACK single-node compute benchmark results in a mean single precision performance of 0065 GFLOPS and a mean double precision performance of 0041 G flops for one Raspberry Pi Model B board. A cluster of 64 Raspberry Pi Model B computers, labeled Iridis Pi, achieved a LINPACK-HPL suite result of 1.14 GFLOPS at 216 watts for C. $4,000. Thank you for watching. Brought to you by WikiVidi Documentaries. Please like and subscribe below. Please like and subscribe below.